There's a certain kind of heaviness that settles over you sometimes, not the physical kind that others can see, but the invisible weight that makes even the smallest tasks feel impossibly difficult. You wake up with it, you carry it through your day. That sensation of moving through life as if gravity has somehow doubled just for you, where responding to a text feels exhausting, where the thought of preparing a meal seems overwhelming, where the space between your thoughts feels clouded and thick. And what makes it worse is how invisible it is to everyone else. You smile when you need to, you show up when you have to, but inside, everything feels like it's happening at a distance, like you're watching your life from behind a glass wall, unable to fully connect with it. And the more you try to push through this heaviness, to act normal, to keep going as if nothing is wrong, the more tired you become. Not just physically tired, but tired in your bones, tired in your spirit, tired in places rest doesn't seem to reach. And maybe you've been told it will pass. Maybe you've been told to just think positively. Maybe you've been told everyone feels this way sometimes. But when you're in it, really in it, those words don't help. They just make you feel more alone, more misunderstood, more convinced that something is fundamentally wrong with you that others don't experience. What most people don't understand about these heavy episodes is that they don't just affect your mood. They change how you experience everything. Colors seem less vibrant. Food tastes bland. The future feels not just uncertain, but somehow empty, stripped of the possibilities and hopes that usually pull you forward. Even memories that once brought comfort suddenly feel distant or tinged with an ache that wasn't there before. And your thoughts, they become unreliable narrators. They tell you stories about yourself, about your worth, about your future, that you would never believe on better days. But in these moments, they sound like the truest voice in the room. This is just how things are, they whisper. This is your reality now. And the most convincing lie they tell is that it will always feel this way, that this heaviness is who you are now, not just what you're experiencing temporarily. What makes these episodes so difficult isn't just the feelings themselves, it's how they isolate you, how they create a reality that seems separate from everyone else's. You look at people laughing, making plans, moving through their days with apparent ease, and you wonder, what do they know that I don't? What secret did I miss about how to be a person in this world? Why does existence itself feel like such a struggle for me when others make it look so natural? But here's what you may not realize in those moments. That heaviness isn't you. It isn't your identity or your future. It's a temporary state, a weather pattern moving through the landscape of your life. And just like any weather, no matter how severe, it changes. It always changes, even when that feels impossible to believe. The problem is, when you're in it, waiting for it to naturally shift feels unbearable. The minutes stretch into hours, that stretch into days, and the weight doesn't just affect your mood. It affects your ability to take care of yourself, to connect with others, to remember what matters to you. It creates a cycle that can be incredibly difficult to break. You feel bad, so you withdraw, which makes you feel worse, which makes you withdraw more. But there's something no one tells you about these heavy moments. You don't have to wait for them to pass on their own. You don't have to endure them passively. There are ways to shift your internal experience, not to magically erase all difficulty, but to create enough space around it that you can breathe again, to lighten the load just enough that you can remember. This isn't all there is. This isn't all you are. What I'm talking about isn't about denying what you feel. It's not about forcing positivity or pretending everything's fine when it isn't. It's about working with your nervous system, your body, your attention in ways that can genuinely create shifts in your internal state. Small shifts at first, perhaps, but shifts that can mean the difference between being overwhelmed and finding just enough room to remember your resilience. The hidden cost of not knowing how to navigate these episodes goes beyond just feeling bad temporarily. Each time you sink into that heaviness without tools to respond, the pattern becomes more deeply grooved. Your nervous system learns that this is your baseline. Your mind becomes more practiced at those heavy thoughts. The path to that internal state becomes well-worn and easier to slip down. And over time, that affects everything. It affects how you see yourself as someone at the mercy of these episodes, rather than someone who has agency within them. It affects your relationships as you start to withdraw preemptively, expecting that you won't be able to show up fully. It affects your dreams and goals as you hesitate to commit to things, unsure if you'll have the internal resources to follow through. But most painfully, it affects your connection to yourself. The longer you spend in that disconnected state, the harder it becomes to remember who you are apart from the heaviness. The harder it becomes to access the parts of yourself that still feel joy, curiosity, peace, wonder. Those parts don't disappear. They're never actually lost, but they can become temporarily inaccessible behind the wall of heaviness. What's rarely acknowledged is how much of this struggle happens invisibly. You carry it alone because there's no obvious language for it, because society still doesn't have comfortable ways to say, "I'm not okay today," without it becoming a thing, without it requiring explanations or solutions, without it making others uncomfortable. So instead, you push through. You pretend. You exhaust yourself maintaining an appearance that everything is fine while inside. You're desperate for relief. But there's a deeper wisdom available to you, one that doesn't get talked about often enough in our quick fix culture. It's the understanding that these episodes aren't just random afflictions. They're often messengers from parts of yourself that need attention. They're your system's way of saying, something here needs care, something here needs to change, something here is asking for your awareness. That doesn't mean you're causing your own suffering or that you should blame yourself for these feelings. It means that your inner experience contains intelligence, even the painful parts, especially the painful parts. And learning to listen to that intelligence, rather than just trying to overcome it or ignore it, can transform your relationship with these heavy episodes. There's a paradox here that takes most of us years to understand. Accepting the heaviness is often the first step to lightening it. Not because acceptance is resignation, but because fighting against what already is creates a second layer of suffering. It creates tension, resistance, self-judgment that only adds to the original burden. When you can say, yes, this is how it is right now, you stop using precious energy fighting reality, and that energy becomes available for something else, for the small shifts that eventually create bigger change. This doesn't mean you passively endure. It means you start from an honest place. This is what's real right now. And from that place of truth, you can take steps to care for yourself with wisdom instead of desperation. you can respond to what's actually happening rather than exhausting yourself battling what you wish wasn't happening. So, what does this actually look like in practice? It starts with recognizing that your body, attention, and breath are powerful gateways to your internal state. That by working with these elements directly, you can create immediate shifts in how you feel, not by forcing yourself to be different, but by giving your system what it needs to naturally find a different balance. First, there's your body. When heaviness descends, notice what happens physically. Notice how your shoulders might rise toward your ears, how your breathing might become shallow, how your jaw might tighten, how you might physically collapse inward as if trying to protect your heart. These aren't just responses to the heaviness. They become part of what maintains it. Your body doesn't just express your emotions, it helps create them. So instead of trying to think your way out of the heaviness, start with your physical form. Even if it feels mechanical at first, even if it feels like you're just going through motions, stand up and stretch your arms overhead as wide as they'll go, opening your chest. Roll your shoulders back and down. Unclench your jaw. Take up more space. Your body doesn't know the difference between genuine confidence and deliberately assumed postures of confidence. It responds either way. Then there's movement. Not the exercise you think you should do, but any movement that feels accessible. If all you can do is walk around your room for 2 minutes, do that. If you can step outside and feel the air on your skin, do that. If you can put on music and let your body respond to it in any way, even the smallest way, do that. Movement isn't just about physical health. It's about interrupting the static patterns that maintain heaviness. It's about reminding your system that flow is possible, that change is possible, that you're not actually frozen, even when you feel immobilized inside. And then there's your breath, perhaps the most immediate tool available to you in any moment. When heaviness descends, breathing often becomes constricted, shallow, held. Just noticing this pattern and deliberately shifting it can create space where there was none. Try this. Breathe in for a count of 4. Hold for a count of 1. Exhale for a count of 6. Hold for a count of 1. And repeat. Do this for just 2 minutes, keeping the exhale slightly longer than the inhale. And watch what happens to the quality of your thoughts, to the sensation in your chest. But beyond these physical approaches, there's the matter of your attention itself. The mind has a way of narrowing your focus to what's wrong, what's lacking, what hurts. It's not that those elements aren't real. They may well be, but they're never the whole picture. They're never the complete truth of your experience, even in the hardest moments. So practice deliberately widening the lens, not forcing yourself to only see positives, but making space for the full complexity of what's here. Maybe alongside the heaviness, there's also the warmth of sunlight coming through your window. Maybe along with the difficult thoughts, there's also the comfort of your favorite sweater against your skin. Maybe within the isolation, there's also the sound of birds outside, or the reliability of your own breath moving in and out. This isn't about dismissing what's hard. It's about remembering that even in the darkest moments, reality is always more textured, more varied, more complex than your mind tells you it is. And deliberately noticing these other elements isn't denial, it's accuracy. It's seeing more of what's actually true instead of only what the heaviness wants you to focus on. Another powerful shift comes from connecting with something larger than your immediate experience. This doesn't have to be spiritual or grand. It can be as simple as looking at the night sky and remembering the vastness that holds you. It can be placing your hand on a tree and feeling the life that's been growing there long before your current struggles began. It can be watching water flow in a stream or waves move on a shore, reminding yourself that nothing, not even the heaviest feelings, remains static forever. This connection to something beyond yourself helps dissolve the illusion that your mind creates, that your current state is all there is, all there ever will be. It gently reminds you that you exist within larger rhythms, larger movements, larger stories than the one your mind is currently telling. Again, not to dismiss what you feel, but to place it in a context that makes it more bearable, less absolute. And then there's the matter of connection. The heaviness convincingly argues for isolation. It tells you that no one wants to deal with your struggles, that you'll only bring others down, that it's better to withdraw until you feel better. But this is perhaps its most dangerous deception, because connection, even in small doses, even when it feels difficult, is one of the most powerful antidotes to the isolation that deepens heavy emotions. This doesn't mean you need to explain yourself or perform happiness or have deep conversations about your state. Sometimes connection can be as simple as texting a friend to ask how they're doing, calling a family member just to hear their voice, sitting in a coffee shop where other humans are present. Small moments of being witnessed, of remembering you exist in a world with others, can interrupt the closed circuit of heavy thoughts in ways that surprise you. What all these approaches have in common is that they don't require you to already feel better before you can use them. They don't ask you to somehow conjure energy or motivation that has temporarily left you. They meet you exactly where you are, with small, manageable steps that acknowledge the reality of what you're experiencing, while also creating the conditions for that experience to shift. And perhaps most importantly, they help you remember something that's easy to forget when heaviness descends, that you are not your heavy episode. You are not your feelings. You are the awareness that notices them. You are the consciousness in which these feelings and thoughts arise. And that consciousness is always larger, always more spacious than any temporary state moving through it. As you practice these approaches, working with your body, your breath, your attention, your connection to something larger, your relationships with others, something gradually begins to shift. Not dramatically at first, not like flipping a switch, but slowly, like dawn breaking after a long night. You start to have moments where you realize the heaviness isn't quite as dense as it was, where you find yourself genuinely laughing at something, where you feel a flicker of interest in something that had seemed meaningless before. These moments may be brief at first. They may come and go, but they're evidence of what was true all along, that no state, however convincing, is permanent, that your capacity for lightness was never actually lost, just temporarily obscured, that underneath the heaviness, you remain whole. So if something in this video resonated with you, if you felt even a moment of space opening up within the heaviness, leave a comment with the word lighter. Let it be a reminder to yourself that small shifts matter, that relief is possible, that you have more agency in these moments than your mind wants you to believe. And if these words feel like something you might need to hear again, subscribe. Not because I have all the answers, but because sometimes we all need gentle reminders of what we already know deep down. that we contain more capacity, more resilience, more light than our darkest moments ever reveal. And remembering that returning to that truth again and again is how we find our way home to ourselves. One small shift, one lighter moment at a time.